obviously forgot something.
It's coming off a bye week.
Yeah, ready to rock.
We're playing those Broncos.
Donkeys.
Easy.
Gotta be sensitive to our Denver fans, even if we don't understand them.
I gotta represent, also my high school. I went to high school with Joe Delaney.
There you go.
Joe Delaney was a senior when I was a freshman at Houghton High School in Louisiana.
Wow, that's great.
What a wonderful connection.
We won state that year, of course.
Yeah.
Big time.
I had just moved to Louisiana from northern New York. My dad was in the Air Force. And then we took a bus trip from Houghton down to Houma, Louisiana. And it was also at the time when the farmers were protesting. There was like a whole convoy of farm equipment back in the, what was that, 76? Good God, that was a long time ago. But down into the bayou country of Louisiana. Maybe we should get started because we got a big agenda. So good morning, everyone. I'm Rick Usher, digital equity practitioner, retired from City of Kansas, Missouri, and now in private practice, the Usher Garage LLC, and happy to be part of the steering council. This morning's agenda is going to be, I think, really interesting for everyone. And if we could do introductions of folks that are new to the organization or new, maybe if this is your first meeting, if you want to say hello. Ken, we could start with you.
Okay, Ken Heitland. I'm on the board of directors for Once We Were Refugees, which is a 501c3 nonprofit working primarily in vocational training for refugees. We focus on sewing training, but we have done work in other areas as well. And we started out in Delalam facility, and so that was my connection with them. And Della has also provided computers a couple of years ago, some laptops that we have yet to use. We got connected with Kaufman through the Fast Track program, and were appointed an affiliate for the Fast Track program. But because of the challenges with internet connectivity and computer literacy with refugees, as well as the pandemic, we really have not been able to get that off the ground. So that's kind of where we sit.
All right, thank you. Any other new attendees?
My name is Laura Stockton. I work for Goodwill of Western Missouri and Eastern Kansas. As of the first of the year, my position will be digital inclusion instructor.
Excellent.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Oh, hi, this is Megan Shea. I work with Carly Warner at Comcast, and I'm just filling in for her today.
All right, thanks for joining.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Tracy Moss. I'm working with the Kansas City Public Library on their DIY initiative. I'm an AmeriCorps Vista member. I haven't ever attended one of these meetings before, but Wendy sent me the invitation and hopes that this might help out with our initiative a little bit.
All right, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And I'm Kim Guile. I work with Tracy. It's been a very long time since I've attended one of these meetings. So
Kim who?
Yeah, hi Rick. It's good to see you.
Glad you're with us here. Any other new attendees?
I just wanted to, oh, sorry,
yes,
go ahead.
Lisa Blue, singing in for the Urban League of Greater Kansas City today. Hello.
Hi, thank you.
Hi. Can we give a warm welcome to Rachel Merlo, who's joining us? Hi, Rachel.
Rachel's
back. Welcome back.
Thank you. It was a really great time away with the baby, but I'm really glad to see your faces. I miss you all.
We've missed you too.
Good to see you.
We feel like we've watched him grow on Instagram. So thanks for
Yeah,
everything, Evan.
yes, he's pretty magical. We're very lucky.
All right. Any other else new to the group? Hey, well, okay, so let's get to the agenda then. And good morning, Mike. I see you're here. Mike Heckman is with us this morning. He's with Rock Creek Way and has been working on a project with Casey Rising and interviewing several, maybe a lot of folks on this call might have been interviewed by Mike. So we've asked Mike to come in and give us an update on what his findings have been related to this project of KC Metro connectivity and the digital divide. So thank you, Mike. Do you need to screen share or?
Yeah, that'd be great, Rick. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, if you could give me access to screen share, I'll throw up a bit of my summary. Let me find it right now.
You should be able to now. Let me know if you have any trouble.
Yep.
Great.
Can you guys see? Can you guys see it?
Yep.
Great. Well, yeah. Thanks for the invite, Rick, and Rick and Carrie had both asked that I come in and do a little bit of an update on the activity that I've been working on. And for those of you, can you see that if I go full screen?
That's great.
Okay.
Yeah, that's great.
For those of you on the steering committee, you will have seen this information before, but Rick and Carrie thought it'd be really germane to the full group. So I'm glad to walk you through some of my kind of thematic findings. So I'll try to be conscientious of time. I know you have a pretty full agenda, but feel free to wave at me or pipe in if you've got a question along the way. Just by way of setup, I'll tell you, I am, as Rick said, from Rock Creek Way and working in conjunction with Casey Rising and Mark to do some analysis around really connectivity in the digital divide in our community. My focus, I'm not a broadband and digital expert. I'm a general business guy with a couple decades of experience in the Kansas City market. And so I look at things, I think because of that, I look at things through, I'll call it a thematic lens. And that's how I'll talk to you all today. I mean, everybody on this call is an expert in their own rights and likely either was an input to some of these findings or knows far more than I do on this topic. So if you'd allow me to just kind of tell you what I've synthesized and some of the themes that have come up during my discussions, hopefully that will be helpful. First off, what did I do? I interviewed from a bunch of different lenses and different angles. And I like, whenever I meet somebody for the first time, I try to understand what lens they look through, because I think that's an important piece of context. I've spent about 20 years in healthcare and healthcare technology, and I look through the world via a healthcare lens. So even when I think about digital equity and connectivity, my natural instinct is to think about, oh, how will this affect a provider-patient relationship? And that's just that's an important lens for me. And everybody I spoke to had their own set of lenses that I think were really, really valuable and interesting to the conversation. I won't read off this list, but you can kind of get an idea of the organizations I've spoken to. There's probably a couple that aren't represented on this list that I may have talked to in the last couple of weeks, but my intent was to be as comprehensive as was feasible. So what did we talk about? We talked about the digital divide through the three-legged stool of broadband access, devices, and skills and know-how, and then really kind of wrap the discussion around the fact that, I think most of the people on this call would agree, connectivity is just a really critical and interwoven factor within the community. I mean, broadband has become really an essential service to really function in the economy. I think that's important, an important acknowledgement that, you know, somebody that may not spend a lot of time in this arena doesn't take the time to step back and contemplate. So I wanted to mention that. Most of my interviews may have had a pseudo structure to them, but quite frankly, the most productive way to have a conversation with folks has been just open dialogue, and that allowed me to really have a real conversation with folks that are passionate around this topic, and these sort of topics of discussion gave us a bit of a framework. So let me walk you through what I'm calling validated themes, and here's what I mean by that. I mean that these are items that I expected to come out, and I was validated. So there are probably no surprising pieces of information on these validated themes for you all, but I think it is important to note that these were consistent themes, regardless of the lens by which people were looking through. So first, COVID's been kind of an exposing factor. It's exposed visible gaps related to coverage, specifically in these areas of healthcare, education, and employment. Again, probably obvious to you all, but certainly a validated theme. Next, aggregated data is pretty difficult to obtain. I had heard this a lot as I was kind of coming into this project, and that was validated with just, it's difficult to get information and data that is some of it's fragmented and some of it's proprietary, and to connect that data and information in a way that's usable is a challenge. Next, the basic FCC guidelines of 25.3, I would venture to say nobody's on the call is going to raise their hand and say, yeah, that's the viable meets minimum measurement that we should all look at from a go forward basis. And that was certainly validated in my conversations. What was less clear is what is the right answer. And I heard a variety of opinions on this, from 100 up to 100 down to 100 up, 10 down to 1 gig all around, to kind of a subjective answer that, well, it depends on what someone might be needing at a particular moment in time. So I think that's kind of unsettled in my mind on what the right answer is, but what is settled is probably 25.3 is not the right long-term answer. Next, there are a lot of active participants in our community really energized by this topic, and I think that's evidenced. I don't know how many people are on the call today, but I think it's a lot, and I think it's, you know, this group is certainly an indication of how wide the interest and activity is related to this topic. Again, probably not surprising to you all, because you're all actively engaged. Excuse me. Next, measurable impact is paramount to long-term success. I think that as a statement is true. The answer is more complex. A lot of folks have ideas, maybe even project-oriented ideas that have their own sets of measures and metrics to discern whether they were successful or not. What's more difficult is to find the measures that can sort of transcend individual projects. And that's something personally that's on my mind as it relates to how to advance the ball in our community. And then, you know, I think finally a strong recognition exists that, you know what, there's a boatload of funding that's going to be available soon. It's going to be distributed by the state as part of the $400 million allocation that's been identified already, and then the additional funds that will be coming out of the infrastructure package. And I think with that, there's an elevated sense of interest, urgency, and maybe hopefully collaboration, because that financial opportunity is really on the horizon. So next, let me tell you about unexpected themes. So these are, again, these may not be unexpected to you, but these were not top of mind for me as I started this qualitative interviewing, qualitative research. One, there seems to be a pretty large willingness to support what I'm calling a dynamic information repository. And there's a few folks probably on this call that have been involved in this activity. Just really a desire to spend extra time to get that previously fragmented information into something that's a bit more usable to the community. And that doesn't always mean just coverage data. It means information about what's going on in the community, what's going on at the individual project basis, et cetera. Two, and this is maybe the most important one to me, or maybe kind of the aha moment for me, and that's that meaningful utilization is as important. It might be more important than just the general connectivity progress as it relates to the three-legged stool of coverage, device, and digital literacy. And I'll expand on that just a little bit. But what I mean by that is if people have access to coverage or a device or even the education to utilize the device, but they don't have a known reason to use it, that's a big issue. So finding components that I'm calling meaningful utilization are really critical activation points that I think we should all pay attention to. And the three that really pop up in my mind are education related, healthcare related, and employment or job related. And those are really wide areas of utilization. I mean, you can envision somebody's using technology and connectivity to actually do their job, or to find a job, or maybe to hire somebody. There are a number of use cases within that broad category, and certainly the same from an education and healthcare standpoint. Next, success of advancing connectivity and digital equity has important adjacent factors. And this was really educational for me. I mean, having conversation with folks that would tell me, again, this may not be profound for you all to hear, but when somebody would say, yeah, it's great, there's access, there's fiber that, goes to whatever, whatever domain or housing we're talking about. But guess what? That person has their electricity turned off, or they're worried about food insecurity. They're worried about these other issues that on a Maslow's hierarchy of needs is supersede even any attention that can be aimed at connectivity in the digital divide, which is, I think, an interesting thing to reconcile, because we just said earlier how important digital equity and connectivity is to the full participation in the economy, and knowing that you have all these adjacency factors that either could contribute to the usage or prevent usage is, I think, an important consideration. How to address it is complex. Let's see. Next, some of the elements around executing solutions in this arena have to be done with feet on the street. There's, I think, great ideas and concepts and programs that are far-reaching in nature, but at the end of the day, you've got some agency or some volunteer or a family member or a neighbor that's actually impacting progress in a positive way. And I think sort of understanding the mix between, if you will, kind of macro level programming and micro level execution is an important theme. Next, and again, some of you on the call might say, of course we knew this, but most ISPs have some pretty significant national programs and a willingness to do some local programming work, specifically around access and affordability. And I think that's, I don't know if those programs are used as widely and as effectively as they could be. And then finally, Kansas City, again, in my opinion, but also derived from some of the discussions I've had, we should be careful in avoiding setting or questioning standards that we don't have a chance to impact. And I know I made my comment about the 25-3, but set that aside for the moment. With the funding that's going to be coming down and that we'll all be paying attention to, there will be requirements associated with that funding. There'll be specific questions needing to be asked. There'll be specific objectives identified. And I think everyone around this virtual table, could easily say, well, hey, that's a good start, but it should be a little bit different. Or I know that you asked the question where the answer might be green, but I think it's both green, purple, and red. And I think that's a danger. And anybody who's been in the private sector answering RFPs to try to win business, you quickly come to a frustrating point where you say, well, what I have to offer is so much better than what this potential client is asking for. And I want to sell what it is that I have to offer. And that's a danger, because ultimately, if you don't answer the question that's asked, then you miss the opportunity to provide maybe an elevated level of service or offering. And I thought that was worth pointing out. Excuse me. So let me actually pause there, because again, I want to be conscientious of time. I go down a little bit deeper into those 3 areas that I brought up earlier, and I'm glad to walk through those. But I don't know that it's necessary either. So Rick, coach me a little bit on.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Yeah, and thanks for the presentation to this point. We do have 42 attendees, and these are folks that I think all completely understand what you're trying to achieve here. And we could open it up for a couple of questions now before you proceed with the next slides, if that might be useful. Anyone has a pressing question.
I just wanted to step in with a comment, because to Mike's earlier point, I have had a chance to view this presentation already, and it continues to grow on me, Mike, and it's a really a great.
Oh, this is Megan.
It's a great distillation of
Megan,
the things that you've been able to pull together. Yeah, I think she muted herself. Yeah. But what I wanted to say is relative to the point you made on the slide just before this about the feet on the street and the degree to which almost every single one of us on this call, we spend 99% of our time, doing our thing. And oftentimes I will be happy to attest to the fact that there has been great partnership and collaboration just by virtue of the fact that through, forums like this, we get to know what each other is doing. But when I first got this presented to me and I asked the question, kind of, what are we trying to achieve by having these results, by doing this work, by exposing these themes? And a big part of it does come down to, with the amount of funding and awareness and opportunity that we're facing in the future, a lot of it comes down to how, both at the federal and the state level, each city presents itself in terms of its needs and in its capabilities of solving those needs. And so what I like and what I hope will happen as a result of us learning about this is to recognize that, the biggest reason we get together is so that we not only share with each other the information about what we're each doing, but that in its collective effort, that and that's why we've got a thing called the Coalition for Digital Inclusion in Kansas City. We can present as unified a vision to the state and to the federal government about why Kansas City matters, why Kansas City as a unified group of people, even though we're all doing our individual things, why we deserve to be viewed as a place that's really worthy of getting the attention and obviously the resources that tend to get doled out by city by city by city. And so I don't really know, again, it's a complex thing, but the more we can do to continue to share information and wherever it makes sense, to find ways to naturally collaborate, but even more than that, in the way we message it, in the way we start using, I think more deliberately, some of our communication tools, our social media platforms and things like that. It seems to me, and I think Timarbeiter from the state is on this call, and I'd love to get Tim's perspective too, but you know, because at the state level, you're limited in what you can do as an individual. But boy, if a city can present a unified case, I would think that means we have more chances of getting the attention and the resources that, you know, all of these otherwise disparate efforts would deserve.
And Tom, I'd like to point out, when you say city, we're really talking the Kansas City region.
The region. Yeah, absolutely. That's what I meant.
Wyandotte County. And we know, you know, just from the work we've done, where the digital divide is deepest, but it is an issue really across all of the MARC footprint, the MARC region of the KC Metro. So does anyone else have a quick question for Mike at this point? We can let him proceed with slides.
This is John Fitzpatrick. Just a quick one, I think. Mike, in the previous slide, you had proposed that we avoid using controversial metrics. Do you have examples of what a controversial metric might be?
Let me try to back up here. Let's see. When you say, yeah, so what I guess what I mean by avoiding controversial metrics or setting our own standards, I think is what I'm referring to is, you know, we may have, you know, I mean, we can use the I hate to use it, but I'll use the 25-3 point as an example. If a new you know, recommendation or stake in the sand, if you will, comes out as part of a state program that says, hey, we're looking to solve, we're looking to you know, validate that there's connectivity at a 110 coverage level, and you answer it with a 1 gig level, I think that we missed the mark on answering the question that was asked. And again, I hate using that as an example because I'm sure there's lots of opinions on that particular one, but I don't know that they're controversial metrics as much as not answering the question that is asked, and not acknowledging that it may be difficult for us to change the measuring stick, you know, whatever that measuring stick might look like.
Okay, thank you.
This is Leslie. I just wanted to offer a brief response to that. In the NOFOs I've been reviewing, it's a minimum of 25.3. So I appreciate your example, but oftentimes it's presented as a minimum, and gig speed is certainly something that they don't discourage. It's just not something they require. So it would be great to think about other examples too that might help us avoid those controversial or just misused metrics that you mentioned.
My take on this is that, you know, when these offers, when these RFPs or when these offers come out, there will be the list of questions, and clearly, you know, I mean, a lot of us on these calls have responded to RFPs in the past, and sometimes there are sections to add additional information, but you know, to Mike's point, filing a complete application obviously is going to get us more attention and more success in moving forward. Now, there could be, I mean, I'll just throw this out here, that this coalition and the work that I think we've seen happening in the Kansas City region, in a lot of ways, is setting a standard across the country. So there may be metrics that some of these organizations have that aren't on the radar, say yet, of state or federal programs. But clearly, though, if you want to get the grant, you've got to answer the questions. So does anyone else have a question for Mike at this point?
Rick, you can tell me if I'm going to jump too far ahead, but what jumped out at me is the notion that Mike brought up about meaningful utilization, because I think there are some assumptions that we make about our clientele, if you will, in terms of literacy, computer literacy, English literacy, familiarity with the community standards, and even to the point of health standards, and you know, that sort of thing, that we just take for granted in a lot of ways, and we will be challenged. I have been challenged significantly by those differences in culture, differences in background, and so on, that to try to do what I was hoping to be able to do with refugees, because they arrived literally, as you know, especially the ones most recently from Afghanistan, with nothing but the clothes on their back and no background whatsoever in American culture and or understanding or appreciation for what's here, other than freedom.
Right. Yeah, those are, I'm sure, huge and unique challenges, and we will get into that conversation more here in the next section. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up at this point, because utilization, that, you know, clearly is the encompassing issue of access and equity. Okay, Mike, you want to proceed with your slides?
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do, because we're 25 minutes in here, is I'm going to skip ahead to this. So I'm going to do a series of focus groups next week. And I've got a couple of folks on the call here today that will be joining me and co-facilitating these. And I think it would, anybody on this call that, especially if I didn't get a chance to speak with you one-on-one, but have an interest in providing some additional feedback, reaction, etc., it would be a great opportunity to join. So I'm setting these focus groups with some kind of sub themes. So the whole topic will be connectivity and digital equity. Well, the one will be kind of a little bit more focused discussion around collaborative governance, which we talked about a little bit today. The other will be about value programming, and the final will be about measurable impact. But all of them will overlap heavily. And so I'm probably will distribute, or I'll ask either Rick or Carrie to distribute the invites for these focus groups to this broad group. And I encourage any of you who might want to participate in one of those to please do so. And hopefully I'll get that out sometime by the end of the day today.
All right, thank you.
And that's what I have.
All right. Let's open it up for more questions then. I got a few more minutes left on the agenda if we want some more questions for Mike's work at this point. I would say, Mike, I appreciate your work on this. As we're building a relationship, this coalition being this large group of subject matter experts on digital equity and inclusion, and building a relationship with the Mid-America Regional Council, KC Rising, our chambers of commerce, just to demonstrate that, you know, we have this capacity in Kansas City, and then we know the capacity of Mark and these other organizations to communicate with our congressional delegations to help us secure those funds, and that we're certainly, all of us are here to assist in that process, again, of filling out proposals, or even suggesting some proposals for state and federal programs we might implement here in Kansas City. During our interview, I gave you just kind of a brief overview of the Connect Home initiative that we were part of in Kansas City back in 2015 under the Obama administration. Through that program, this coalition did come together in a lot of ways, I think on a smaller scale than what I'm hoping we're going to see, you know, potentially millions of dollars coming to the region to solve digital equity and digital access issues. But we do have success we can build on from that program.
Hey, Rick.
Yeah.
It's Carrie. I know Timarbeiter, our state of Missouri broadband officers on the call. I don't know. I just want to give him a chance to jump in here to talk about any of this. If he's been really instrumental and helpful in guiding us through what might be available in the coming months as it relates to federal funding. So Tim, I'm kind of putting you on the spot. If you're there and available to say anything, or if you want to, here's a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Carrie, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, thanks, Tim.
Awesome. So I guess the groundwork that's being laid with this research data interviews really does provide the overall strategy. I think my challenge to this coalition, the KC Rising, and the other major entities, who will digest this information, is to ask the hard questions next, based on the knowledge you now know, and many of us know it already. But to have that information and data at your fingertips is really to decide as a coalition, with KC Rising, with Mark, what are the top 3 to 5 priorities that need to get addressed. You already kind of know what those are, but have those in your mind. Because if you can get organized on that front, that really helps gel together quickly when funds are available. So there's multiple waves coming, folks. So just breathe, it's okay. From an American Rescue Plan state resources, that will be most likely funding opportunities published in midsummer 2022. Okay. Shifting over to infrastructure bill. As I understand it today, most of those notice of funding opportunities will not occur until probably May of 2022 at the earliest possible moment. So those are in addition to the state dollars that states will access through the infrastructure bill, but there are also separate programs listed in the infrastructure bill as it relates to many of these strategies. So typically they're on 90-day timers. So as a state, I will have 90 days. We, Department of Economic Development, will need to marshal what we need to do from a state perspective for the infrastructure bill with the governor's office and get our materials in 90 days. For the other programs, there will be other access points. Typically, NTIA will be the lead entity on that. So as you have those priorities already identified, you're doing the work now, which is great. But you can coalesce and prioritize over the spring and really know what your top priorities are. So when the funding opportunities drop, you're really just doing a plug and play. And then you as a team are then coalescing around editing the narrative, making sure our data points are strong. Because again, many times at the federal level, it's a competitive grant cycle. Certainly they'll love to see supportive letters from senators and representatives and whatnot. But on the state standpoint too, again, competitive cycles, many of them will be programs and they'll open the cycle. Here are the parameters, here are the eligible activities. So now you're ready to go as a coalition because you already know your priorities. So my next challenge to that is once you know your priorities, put together what is a feasible, realistic program of work for each of those priorities and know what those dollar amounts are. Just again, it doesn't have to be a perfect science, but just have a general idea of what it's going to cost to deploy priority number 1, priority number 2, priority number 3. Because in every instance, whether it be ARPA or infrastructure bill, there's going to be some kind of local match looked for. So, and whether that come from the public entities that are represented on this group or private entities who are willing to support the endeavor. The beauty of doing a regional approach, you could probably make that match up pretty quickly. But the state will be asking for a match. The infrastructure bill has already said it will ask for a match of at least 25% for most of the programs, but you will be allowed, I think, to intermingle other sources of federal dollars. There's a lot to be done over the spring. So that just know that you guys will be working, state will be working, NTIA will be working, but there's a lot to digest. And I know that there's some slide decks coming more on the infrastructure bill, and that will kind of give us some direction. But many of these people on this group right here are already well connected with NDIA, with Shelby, with NTIA. You guys are already clued in, and that's a huge advantage. So when those NOFOs drop, notice of funding opportunities, you're well prepared to fill those program applications out. But I would also ask this of this group, whatever those priorities are, whatever those top 5 priorities are, have a lead. Don't make it just one person. Have different leads on each priority. So you may be able to access funding for multiple priorities. And then now you're ready to go out of the gate. Once funding is secure, you're ready to mobilize. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Mike.
Thank you,
Tim,
Tim. Yeah, I just
Yeah.
wanted to say too, because Leslie put it in the chat, and I don't know that Tim has made this, officially public, but he is leaving the state sometime in January. So we're going to be, hitting you up for a lot of information going forward before you leave the state, and just really grateful for all of your help this far, and really appreciate all you've done to help, help make this coalition a success, and making sure that we can continue to capitalize on the opportunities that are still ahead. So thank you so much, Tim.
Thanks, Tim.
You're welcome, and an honor to work. And yes, I'm not leaving broadband. I'm staying in the industry. I'll just be in the private sector somewhere else. Many of you on this team have my personal information, so please use that. Happy to be your resource afterwards. But if anybody on this coalition, either you personally or somebody in your network who might be interested in becoming the next director of broadband development, I'm throwing in the job description in the chat if you want to link through. They're searching right now. We have some quality candidates throwing their hat in the ring, but never want to underestimate who might be out there and interested. So
great, thank you.
All right, well, thank you, and thank you, Mike, keeping things on time here. We need to move to the next topic. We'll be discussing connecting local immigrants and refugees with home internet programs, such as the Emergency Broadband Benefit and the Internet Access Assistance Program that's being run locally by Casey Digital Drive. I know we have Ken Heitland with Della Lamb with us, and we're hoping some others from organizations that are dealing directly with the immigrant population rehousing are with us. But Ken, if you want to say open the conversation, maybe with the challenges you've been having and this group, we'll see what we can do together.
Happily. Thank you, Rick, for the invitation, and Tom for the invitation as well. I've been working with refugees off and on for about 6 years now. Started with Once We Were Refugees, which is the organization that I'm on the board for. And we're a 501c3 that does primarily vocational training for refugees. As you may know, there are 3 organizations who are involved in resettlement of refugees in Kansas City. Della Lamb is one of them. And my connection to Della Lamb was that they offered us facilities, Once We Were Refugees facilities to do our sewing training when we first got started. We now have a space at the gathering table up on Independence Boulevard. But Della Lamb, Catholic Charities, and Jewish Vocational Services are the 3 resettlement agencies authorized by the government to resettle. Refugees have 90 days, as you may know, $1,200 for the first 3 months to get established in the United States, to get people settled and trained, and I mean, jobs and home and food and kids in school and authorization to work and all of those kinds of things. And that $1,200 goes maybe a month to pay the first rent and food, but that's it. So we jump in after that 90 days to try to do vocational training for, it turns out, primarily women, but not necessarily. And we do then help them get jobs. We have connections with a couple of fabrication industries in Kansas City that use our graduates. It's a 9-week program. When they graduate, they get the sewing machine they trained on, and piles of fabric, and ironing board and iron and all of that. And we do all of that with primarily in-kind gifts and so on. So we do try to get them settled. My great example of failure of meaningful utilization is we got connected up with Kaufman Foundation and were offered the opportunity to be an affiliate agency for delivering the fast track program, because a number of the people who graduate from our training program want to start their own businesses, home businesses, and so on, to go beyond just providing clothing for their families and friends. So the issue was, though, now that we have tried over the last 2.5 years or so to get that off the ground, is that people just simply don't have, it's an English language barrier. We've had clients from 25 different countries of origin come through our program in the last 5 years, and so it's a huge challenge. The language barrier is a huge challenge. Nearly total lack of any literacy in terms of digital literacy and basic business concepts, and then cultural bias against women working at all, period, which is a religious issue as well as a cultural issue. So that has sort of fizzled out in terms of our being able to participate with the fast track program. I did do a beta test with it, a few citizens in America. So, but that's as far as we've been able to go, because they came with those qualifications: English language literacy, of digital literacy, and so on. So that when you talk about serving refugees, that is, you just have to have more realization of what it takes to do that. And I would encourage us to have a broader understanding in our assumptions of what we make in terms of the clientele that we serve, for respecting meaningful utilization.
All right, and so Ken, just while I'm thinking about it, have you contacted Rightfully Sewn or the Sewing Lab?
They are, yes, they both provide a similar kind of service, although there are restrictions again. In some cases, they either require to be the student to pay tuition or to be funded through someone, or they require that they speak English. We don't. We deal, because we're teaching basically a tactile skill. We can demonstrate and they can follow, and it works well. We do work to try to help them beyond the skills, to gain confidence to navigate the business and social environments, and to learn English along the way. We teach in English, but we teach by demonstration as well. So there's very little, again, because of the variety of folks' backgrounds, it's difficult to think in terms of translation or providing a translator and so on.
And this is Tom. I'm really happy to hear you reinforce some things that were featured in a pretty big news story that the Kansas City Star ran just a week or so ago. Mentioning Catholic Charities and Don Bosco and Jewish Vocational Services. But I've also learned that there's a lot of coalition members on this call. Literacy KC is one. Kansas City Health Department. There's a number of individuals and organizations who are in a position to not only just find ways to help, but what Rick really got us started on was the kind of a push to get more people to understand the number of government subsidies that now exist to help people get access to computers and pay for their internet. But like going back to Mike's point, how can we get the information to immigrant populations in a meaningful way? And I'm not asking you to answer that question. By having you on this call, I was hoping we could serve as a forum to reach out to other coalition members who are on this call and say, hey, what are we missing? How can you guys all help how can we all work together to contribute to, you know, easier ways to facilitate understanding and access to some of these programs that are emerging. So I'm literally just kind of putting that out to everyone on the call. If they can jump in, and if they have additional questions for you about, you know, how these, how extra partnerships can help you overcome some of these challenges, that would be great.
I'm all ears.
This is Mary Kay at Literacy KC. I coordinate the digital program, and Literacy KC has combined with Don Bosco at 13th and Vine. I don't know if everyone on the call realizes that. So we have English language classes in addition to a sewing program as well. I don't know if you're aware of that, Ken, but I wanted to make sure you are. So.
Yeah, and Mary Kay, I reached out to Eileen Babowski from the Sewing Lab, and in fact, she was the one that was championing Literacy KC as a great partner from the coalition that's not just in a position to help teach English and teach reading skills, but to expand that awareness of so many of these programs, these support programs that are emerging to help, I guess, again, going back to Mike, in a meaningful way, help the refugee populations learn about the importance of getting a computer, getting access to resources to help pay for their internet and things like that.
More and more of the English language students are coming over to Literacy KC on Troost to take our digital programming classes.
Great. Yeah, and I know, Tom, you've experienced that same thing with PCs for People, with the training that we've done together. There, so it's a huge challenge to understand the breadth of or I should say the variety and from skill set, the skill and knowledge abilities that you kind of get dumped in all together in one class.
Well, and again, I want to link it back to what Mike started us out with. I mean, having the sewing lab is, I mean, it's just a demonstrative example of, you know, why does it matter for me to have internet connection and a computer? Because it reinforces my ability to learn a job skill that helps me earn money to put food on the table for my family. Similarly, we've been talking, I don't know if you guys are aware, we've got a really dynamic new vice president at the Blue Cross Blue Shield, Blue KC. Her name is Tanya Arthur. And she is becoming a real champion for equity across healthcare, but she has put a lot of her staff in touch with us as we're trying to set up some programs that tie, you know, getting computers and internet into the hands of people on the basis of teaching them about making appointments with their doctors online and having some telehealth appointments where things aren't so urgent that they have to go to the emergency room, but they can learn from a telehealth appointment with a nurse or a nurse practitioner. And so, you know, all the ways that we can start building more relevant use cases as a conduit to get people to access, and not just the devices, but, you know, the resources to pay for them, and much more importantly, the rationale for why and how it's going to change their lives.
Yeah, well said.
Yep. So do we have anyone else? Is Rachel Olhausen? I didn't see her on the attendee list, or someone from JVS or other organizations that are serving the immigrant population.
Well, Rick, I would jump in just to say that the library, we have a dedicated staff member specifically for refugee and immigrant services. We have a program called RISE, in which we are continually doing outreach and providing services to people in the community, largely supported out of our Northeast branch over off of Independence Avenue. And this is an area that we're really looking to focus more in trying to offer translation services or people on staff who can be ready at a moment's notice to help our immigrant and refugee populations with whatever questions they might have as it relates to EBB. We've been working on a grant for Communities for Immunity in order to help get the refugee population vaccinated. And some of the studies that we've done have found that these are some of the populations in our community that don't have access of any kind. And so I think it's really an imperative that our coalition understand that this is a group that we all need to be working diligently to try to find ways to communicate and offer services. I think it's a gap for us as a coalition, and I think it's a gap for us as a community. So I would just encourage us to continue to focus on this and to work hard to do more.
Okay.
What was the name of that communities for?
It's called Communities for Immunity.
Community, okay, thank you. Because that is one of our challenges as well, is because it's getting our students immunized so that they don't expose the teachers and the other participants.
Well, and just so everybody knows, the library at our locations, Northeast, Plaza, and I believe Southeast, I'll have to double check and I can put it in the chat, but we are providing free vaccination sites at all of our locations on a weekly basis. So you can always refer people to come to those locations, and I'll get the information out to the coalition.
Okay. All right. All right. So thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Let's move on to the next agenda item, home broadband programs. So, with the internet access assistance program that Aaron Deacon and his team at KC Digital Drive have been running now for, I think, over a year. And then the Emergency Broadband Benefit program that is available through the FCC that started in May. I've been tracking some of the numbers on the Emergency Broadband Benefit they have zip code data that comes out, 5-digit zip code data comes out the first of the month. December, I don't have this month's report wasn't available yet, but Aaron, if you are there, could you give us an update on what the Internet Access Assistance Program activity has been and what opportunities you see?
Yeah, I guess the biggest update that I would give is twofold. One, we've been working as some of these other funding sources have come online to really adjust kind of the copy and the presentation of what has been Internet Access Support Program to be kind of an entry point into different subsidy opportunities. It's really, knowing that so internally, we haven't really rolled this out. I mean, it might be on the website, and maybe Leslie can speak. She probably knows more of the details of how and where we use it. But the funds that have been provided, both from the COVID Recovery Fund, going back to some of the CARES Act funds from last year from Johnson County, other funds that have been donated, it is now Internet Access Fund. Right, so we'll refer to the funding source as the Internet Access Fund, which is a local fund that provides subsidy, still pretty much along the same parameters as it did before. But I think that's part of the, to your question about opportunities and roadmap, that's going to evolve as other funding sources come into play. So part of the analysis that we're continuing to do is identify where there's gaps and what is really needed from a philanthropic standpoint, or even from a provider standpoint. We've talked over the past year to the ISPs who are interested in how they fit into this mix, kind of like the local gas and electric utilities fit. And because the landscape's been so dynamic, I don't think we've had a great answer for that. But certainly there's opportunity, because I think there's going to be some limits to what the evolution of EBB and the utility funds can do. So we think we will want to have an Internet Access Fund that is ongoing, and we're still serving customers through that. But look at the program, the Internet Access Support Program, as a way to take households in and help direct them to the right source of funds, and then ultimately also work with the navigator system the library's setting up. It's kind of the regional approach. So as we get those people in and solve the fairly narrow need, how to make sure they've got home broadband access. How do we then, make sure that they get aligned with the other support resources? Leslie, have I missed anything in that?
Well, I would just say that our program provides support for 6 months through the Internet Access Fund. And obviously, people often have an ongoing need or still an emergent need. So they're still recovering from whatever financial ruin the pandemic brought upon them. So, we are trying to inform people of EBB as they roll off. The other thing that I think is going to be relevant as we shift to the affordable connectivity program is that the subsidy drops to $30. And so, for people who are paying more than that, and there's not a plan that's workable for them at the price point that would cover the whole thing, and they're still not able to afford that it will be just as important but in a different way for us to have that funding available to them so that that subsidy can be combined with our funding. And so, that's just something I've been thinking about a lot, because $50 doesn't sound like a lot more than 30, but for people who are really struggling, that $20 gap is a big deal. And so if the plans are not going to be available that will cover 100% of their costs, we're going to see people falling behind and getting disconnected.
And a couple of things I would add. I mean, I think it's also a big gap in terms of the quality of service. So, and in terms of kind of how we even bridge that to get a good quality connection. So I think that's a good point. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that we're doing a pilot with Full Employment Council right now, and in terms of bringing internet access fund support to people that are enrolled in their programs. And really, from a global perspective, we aren't a direct service agency. We are not. Our sort of mission and role typically is not to kind of be in the trenches like most of the coalition members who are working directly with clients. This has been something that we took on because there was a need, and we're well positioned sometimes to build things where there is a need. But even in implementing at the early stages, we worked with Johnson County Library, several school districts, JFS, PCs for People, and a lot of that was in kind of the harried and hurried work at the end of last year. The project that we're going through with FEC right now is an attempt to be a little bit more deliberate in terms of thinking, through we've got a partner that has these client relationships. We'd really like this program eventually to be more like a clearinghouse of funds that can help connect people who have a client relationship with an existing organization, so that we're not just creating another touch point for people to have to go through, and honestly that we're not taking on that client service burden as our organization, which isn't really our core competency. So part of that is just kind of for transparency and some clarity about where we want to head, but also if there are organizations that are part of the coalition that serve people that feel a need to help provide home internet access to better deliver whatever your core service is, please let us know. Reach out to Leslie or me or William, because I think there's, as we kind of learn from this process with FEC, we're happy to extend this and want to kind of figure out what works for different orgs and what the right balance is between sort of maintaining some level of visibility and even just the reality is it's hard to work with people to figure out the best internet plan at home for them. And so, how much of that we kind of keep and help with, but keeps the client relationship at at somebody who's more attuned to that.
All right. So, Aaron, as we're looking at these programs as tools that will help us close the digital divide, do you have any? And this is what I'm having difficulty tracking with the EBB numbers, but any information on the number of households you're serving? How many of those are new internet subscribers, and how many are just carrying on from like not being able to afford plans that they've had in place? And what are your ideas of how we can maybe use these two programs to further develop them so that we can see how we're actually addressing those clients that are households that are in the digital divide?
Yeah, it's a great question, and we do have some data on that. I don't have it at my fingertips.
Right.
It's also not as clean as I think we'd like it to be, right? Because people kind of come in and out of being connected, and there's a difference between people who, you've got some people who have never been connected and are getting online for the first time. Increasingly, that's a fairly small number, and I think what we see more of is people who had it and have been cut off and have come back on, and then we see a lot of people who have had service but are now just getting it subsidized. Our approach will really be at sort of a micro targeted level, so looking at some specific census tracts and kind of thinking through how we do that segmentation, because I think you're right, there is some more data, but I think it will be dissatisfying for a lot of people who think that data is going to provide clarity.
Right. And so I have a meeting scheduled on this topic for December 9th next week. It's the EBB Outreach Partners meeting, but I'm happy to include obviously the work you're doing, Aaron, in that. But the idea is to bring partners that are participating in EBB and others to look at more of an outreach program so that we can get the word out about these further. Because as I'm looking at the data provided by the FCC, we're only getting numbers of subscribers. It is zip code level data. And so just knowing what we do about where the digital divide exists in Kansas City, Missouri and Kansas City, Kansas, I'm looking at specific zip codes. And on the Kansas City, Missouri side, our health department has identified what they're terming LifeX zip codes that are 64126, 127, 128, 129, 130, and 132. Those zip codes, when you look at the maps of internet subscription levels, those are also zip codes of low internet subscription rates. That we know that there are multiple ISPs available, so it clearly is an affordability gap. There may be some other issues affecting internet connectivity, home internet subscription. But what's heartening to me, I guess, is when I look at the numbers, the rates, the subscription rates are higher in those zip codes. The utilization of EBB is higher in those zip codes. And then in the Kansas City, Kansas area, I haven't, and maybe someone from Wyandotte County folks are on the line, or I could reach out to their health department. I haven't seen a similar LifeX designation, but in looking at the connectivity report that My Sidewalk put together and then overlaying zip codes, to me, it looks like 66, 101, 102, 104, 105 are the most impacted zip codes by poverty and lack of home internet connectivity. And I'm seeing the same thing there, that those zip codes have a higher utilization of EBB than others. There's also a zip code 66106 that has a high rate of utilization of EBB. So how we reach out to folks in those zip codes. Aaron, you mentioned the census tract work. That's the beauty of the KC connectivity report and this other Wyandotte County specific digital inclusion report that my sidewalk put together, is it gives you that census tract level showing, census tracts where home internet connectivity is like less than 40 or 50% of households that we could use.
Rick, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just
Go
wanted to address your question briefly. We do ask, are you connected? Yes or no. Have you ever been connected? Yes or no. Those answers don't always track. So while we could pull those numbers, I don't know exactly how accurate they might be, because sometimes the way people fill out the form doesn't necessarily align with their reality. The other thing is that I think it was John Horrigan, somebody posted on the NDIA listserv, and if I'm remembering correctly, the majority, by quite a lot, of EBB enrollments are for wireless. And so I find that to be concerning. I think that it could be a result of the fact that the wireless carriers just basically said, hey, you qualify. Like I got a you qualify from Spectrum, I think.
Yeah.
So I think that, there's a lot of unknowns, a lot of nuances, and a lot of just digging in more intentionally to this data, because at first blush, it appears one way, and then when you really start looking at it, it looks very different. So the goal of being able to use this program to ensure that people have wired access at home doesn't appear to be playing out the way that we
so Leslie, we do need to move on to the next agenda item. I did want to put, Horrigan did that report of the ZIP +3 data. So I took a look at that. And so this would be, I'm assuming, it looks like maybe KC metro area, 3-digit code 640, 641, 660, 661, and 662. And looking at that data, as of the November 29th report from the FCC, there are 42,300 households in the Kansas City metro area that are subscribing through EBB. So there is high utilization. And then we'll talk more next week about how we make sure the outreach is in the neighborhoods that we're trying to serve. And so Leslie, as we talked about prior to the meeting, if you want to take a few minutes now to discuss the KC Region Digital Equity Resource Guide spreadsheet that you've been working on with the UMKC Digital Equity Working Group. And I know we have William Crumpler on the line with us as well.
Yes, so I put the link in the chat. What we were hoping is that what might happen is that people open this document, and then we just dedicate a few minutes to everybody rolling through those tabs and adding any resources that are missing. So our goal is to try and get a good compilation of digital equity resources for the region, and then decide how we might create a tool that would facilitate easy location of whatever the need might be. So I put the link in the chat.
Do you want to show that real quick? Did you want to?
I mean, I can.
Yeah, we have a few minutes if you want to show folks what is being captured in that document.
Well, again, my hope is that people go ahead and open it up themselves and contribute. So please do that, and I can still share my screen. Okay, wait. I am actually on vacation today and working in my yard. So if you hear any birds, that's what's going on. So we have the tabs at the bottom. We started with infrastructure, affordability, devices, technical support, digital navigation, digital literacy and training, and then just the national resources that are available. You can see that we haven't really done a lot of filling out of some of this stuff because it's just really going to be a copy and paste of the website URLs. But where you have specific links, it would be super helpful to be able to just add that to this spreadsheet. Again, this is a regional effort. We have an awesome, mainly, at least in name, Missouri resource in the Missouri Broadband Resource Rail. But moving this, spreading it out to the region is the goal of this.
Yeah.
Excellent resource. Thank you very much, Leslie. I will share that with our board.
Well, it's still in its infancy. This is basically the information gathering tool, and we will be creating a more searchable, organized tool down the line. So I would say, you may want to rely on the Missouri Broadband Resource Rail for now. And then, as we add the Kansas side of things to this resource, then we'll have a more comprehensive list. So this is very incomplete, spotty, just kind of a brainstorming sort of tool. Like, oh, well, Literacy Kansas City has something, and PCs for People, of course. So this is just as we sort of thought of them, we threw them in this spreadsheet. So I would not consider it something that you might want to pass on, but something that's an initial step in getting something that you want to pass on.
This is a good initial step in organizing, as Timarbeiter was talking about, how we respond when these notices of funding become available and how we can put tools together quickly. And there's also a work plan that we've been looking at as well. So any questions for Leslie on this spreadsheet?
This thing it's open all the time. So please, if something hits you in the shower, like, here it is.
Oh, and hey, I don't feel so bad. You have more tabs open than I do, Leslie. That's cool.
It's
like
a problem.
Get a list of, you got to stay informed, right? So
I know. Sometimes I think I'm going to go back to something, and then 2 weeks later, I'm like, oh yeah, that's still open.
Right.
Okay. So thank you so much for everyone who's contributed so far, and for anyone who will take the time to review it.
Yeah, thank you for giving us that overview as well. Yeah, so at the start of the meeting, I think I neglected to, thank you, Wendy, discuss the just what we're doing here as a coalition. This is and for those of you that are new to the organization, reminder to everyone who's been with us for years, our mission and vision to facilitate digital equity and inclusion across the Kansas City region. And do you have another slide, Wendy? Yeah, so steering council membership, Carrie Coogan, Aaron Deacon, Tom Esselman, Ina Montgomery, Urban Tech. And then, yeah, if you're going to join the organization, no charge to join the organization, but it gives us, it puts you on, of course, on this mailing list to get the meeting notice and any other information that we share. And you can also see on that page other organizations that are members of the coalition. And then we're all over the social media. It goes back a few years back. Tom Esselman and I were going, hey, we're a digital literacy organization, but we're digitally illiterate on the social media side. So we launched Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube channel. And so Wendy will post this video on the YouTube channel. The YouTube channel is Include KC. If you want to look at that. And, like, share, comment, subscribe. So we're, and then, all right, thank you. Our next meeting coming up January 7th, every first Friday morning, 10:30. I guess we're pushing it for New Year. Is that right? And are there any community announcements? Anyone have an announcement? I mentioned EBB outreach partner meeting that I've got scheduled for next week. Anyone else have other information that they want to share? There are some meetings, maybe Wendy, we could share just at the national level on infrastructure spending for broadband. I've seen a few pop up that would be good for some of our membership to watch those and start building an understanding of, as Tim was pointing out, just the schedule of when these dollars might be coming our way.
I don't have an announcement, but I do have a plea for help.
All right.
I am out of my element. I have been asked to just step in and help CHWC a spot for somebody who is experiencing houselessness. So I would appreciate if anybody has any ideas on case management, emergency housing that has to be him by himself, etc. Just if you could reach out to me.
All right. Any other announcements? All right, look at this. I'm ahead of schedule. Thanks everyone for your participation today. So go Chiefs. Yeah, so again, if anybody has anything to add here at the last few minutes, I'll hang around a bit. But great to see everybody.
Rick, thank you, and Tom for including me. I really appreciate it. This has been a great meeting for me, and exposure for Once We Were Refugees, as well as the great resource that Leslie just shared. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for your perspective on these issues too, Ken. I put a link to the Missouri Broadband Resource Rail in the chat. If you want to go there. If you're familiar with KC SourceLink's resource rail for entrepreneurship, SourceLink built this Missouri Broadband Resource Rail. So it's a great program. It is running statewide. The system is managing it. It's also, I'll just throw in more about the partnerships that get formed through this coalition. There's a coordination between the digital navigators that Wendy Pearson and Carrie Coogan are, organizing through the Kansas City Public Library, the Tech Access Hotline and Tech Connect hotlines, to use that broadband resource rail as their resource partner network and making referrals and helping folks out. And let me see what's going on in chat here. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I see a lot of thank yous. Thanks for attending today. All right, well, I'll say goodbye then, unless anyone else has anything to add. Thanks for being here. Have a great weekend.
Okay. You too.